Welcome to the Power Lunch. This is a special edition of my program today. I have, we normally do this program about 12 o'clock noon on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Today is an exception, and I am really excited about my guest. I'll tell you about him in just a second. We are broadcasting on LinkedIn Live, LinkedIn's new platform for live video, which is really exciting. It's also simulcast today on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, and probably a couple other platforms that I'm not aware of. But it's real exciting. Now, the fun part about this show is that it is interactive. Now, in order for it to be interactive, you have to ask questions. And so please ask them on social media. If we don't get to them on the program live, we'll certainly get to them after the program. Now, this is all brought to you by Social Live, which is a new platform that LinkedIn is using for their broadcast. And if you like the program, give it a like or share. We like that. You can also give other people a chance to learn. Now, my promise to you is to bring you the thought leaders, CEOs, best-selling authors, people who are doing really interesting and important work in the world so that we can learn from them. That's the whole point of the show. Today is no exception. I've got Dr. Srini Pillay. He's the CEO of the Neuro Business Group. He's an assistant professor of psychiatry at Harvard University. He also teaches in their executive education program in the business school. He's author of Life Unlocked, Your Brain and Business. And his new book, Tinker, Dabble, Doodle, Try, is one of the things that we're going to be talking about today. Dr. Srini, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Rhett. It's lovely to be with you.
Well, I've been wanting to talk to you for a bit because I could take up a week's worth of programming just talking to you and the different things that I want to talk to you about. But, one of the biggest questions I have for you is, and you talk a lot about this, is how do you become sort of the architect of your own brain? And really, what does that mean? Like, how do we accomplish that?
So, I think the fact that we can become architects of our own brains is incredible news, because prior to understanding that, we used to sort of feel at the mercy of evolution and life. Right. And the fact that we now know that if you learn particular ways of thinking, and if you learn particular ways of managing your emotions, you can optimize brain function, I think speaks to the fact that the brain can change, a phenomenon we call neuroplasticity. With regard to how, I would say there are two different levels. There's the level of learning that I've talked about in my LinkedIn learning videos on depression in the workplace and anxiety in the workplace and how to apply neuroscience in the workplace, where it's an introductory way of thinking about things, and it's mostly based on self-talk. I would say the second level is a deeper level of learning, where it's not simply giving instructions to your brain, but talking about things, learning when to take rests, learning how to take rests, learning about your own complexity, and living into your own possibility. That is more complex, but also possible to do. So let's go first to the first idea about self-talk. Like, how do we know? Well, we know this from brain studies that show that if you speak to yourself in a particular way, you actually can change brain blood flow. So I'll give you an example. Like, let's say you are feeling a little freaked out and you want to feel more confident. Let's say you have a board meeting. You're thinking, I feel nervous, or you have a speech and you're thinking, right, I don't know if I'm about to go on stage. If you want to boost your confidence, the first thing you do is something we call affect labeling, which is call the emotion out, say what it is. And usually it's a mixture. It's like, I'm afraid and I'm excited. And in fact, mixed feelings can protect you against anxiety and depression as well. Okay. And also against physical problems. So you just want to say exactly what you're feeling. When you label an emotion like anxiety or fear, it decreases activation in the brain's fear center. And as a result, your thinking brain, which is connected to the fear center, can actually function more effectively. So that's one example. Okay. The second example is based on an extensive set of research by a professor at Harvard called ironic process theory. And again, a lot of big words, for the simple rule that when you are under stress, avoid using the word not. So if you say, I do not want to lose my temper at the board meeting, you're probably going to lose it if you're feeling stressed, because the brain does exactly the opposite of what you tell it to do under stress.
Okay.
So that's, a way in which you can influence your brain. The third example I'll give is if you're trying to sort of pump yourself up, and you want to tell yourself, I want to be confident, so I'm going to pump myself up. Rather than saying, I'm going to crush this, what you say is, Srini, you're going to crush this. Because if you just say, I'm going to crush this, there's a part of you that is anxious that's talking. That part knows that you don't feel like you want to crush this. But if you say, Srini, you're going to crush this, it recognizes that there's an anxious part of you, but there's also a very competent part of you. And so the anxious part of you can talk to the competent part of you and say, Srini, you're going to crush this, or Rhett, you're going to crush this. So those are just three simple examples, and I can go on talking about this for days, but I'll wait to see what specific questions you have with regard to brain change.
Well, I a million, but I wanted to ask you another question from my own coaching practice. So many of the people that I talk to, overwhelming majority of executives and managers are just overwhelmed, right? And I kind of struggle sometimes to sort of say, okay, what is, to sort of break that down and to sort of help them weed out things that are not important, which is one of the ways to do that. But that's hard, and people don't want to get rid of things that they have and that they're responsible for and or feel anxious about. Is that just the reality that we live in today? Is that just something that we have to just sort of accept, or are there strategies that people can use to sort of calm that overwhelming feeling that we have?
Yeah, I think the overwhelm is a reality. Richard Dobbs and his colleagues at McKinsey have shown that the degree of financial volatility has escalated recently, and along with that, we have this volatility of moves. So I think it is an absolute reality that overwhelm is the way of the world. Technology is overwhelming people. Millennials have never been more anxious. They're known as the anxious generation. Depression is increasing. Suicide is increasing. So there's a lot of evidence to show. Suicide increased by 34% between 2000 and 2000. Overwhelm is real. However, we want to remember that just because the world is overwhelming doesn't mean we don't have a choice about how we interact with that overwhelm in the world. If we just say, if you get up in the morning and you say, okay, bring it on, the world will bring it on and you will be overwhelmed.
Right.
So part of what you want to do is learn how to manage your brain blood flow and do this effectively. So there are a couple of ways, we can talk about this. So in Tinker Dabble Doodle Try, one of the things I highlight is that people are overwhelmed because the way they lead their lives is they get up in the morning and they go focus, 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 fatigue, and then you're out. And what we don't do, can you imagine if you just drove your car for 100,000 miles, and you're going to run out of gas. So that's just the reality. And it's the same thing with the brain. So what I recommend is that when you're using your brain in a work day, you actually should be going focus, unfocus, focus, unfocus, focus, unfocus. And every time you unfocus, you're refueling your brain. So in Tinker Dabble Doodle Try, I actually talk about particular ways in which you can unfocus. So I'll mention a few of those ways. The first is very simple. It's actually napping. So napping for 5 to 15 minutes can create 1 to 3 hours of clarity. And I always say to people, when you're building this downtime, choose 2 or 3 times in the day where you are generally ineffective. Like for me, that would be directly after lunch, middle of the afternoon, by the end of the day, when you're dragging.
Right.
Sometimes you've got a project and you say to yourself, I've got to get through this project. I have no time to nap. Well, that's like saying I have no time to fill gas, because even if you have no time to fill gas, you're going to run out of gas. So in order to refuel, napping for 5 to 15 minutes will give you 1 to 3 hours of clarity. That's number one. Number two, you can do something simple like doodling. Doodling can improve your memory significantly. Jackie Andrade and her colleague showed that doodling actually improves your memory significantly. And then there's one that I particularly, positive constructive daydreaming. And positive constructive daydreaming simply means that you choose 15 to 20 minutes. So you allocate the time in your day. When you allocate, you then say to yourself three things. First, second, you must be doing something. You can't be doing nothing. So you have to be doing something. Like garden. It's going to be hot in the garden, so go and walk. If you go on a walk, and if you're going on a walk and you want to be creative, just one sideline comment, your brain will be more creative if you walk on a curvy path. So if you walk around the block, it's actually less creative. So if you go walk on a curvy path, let's say you go through the woods that's nearby, and you can do this in 15, 20 minutes. The first thing is set the time, then go on the walk. And then the third thing is simply let your mind go. So think about something that's positive, something that's wishful, maybe lying on a yacht, lying on the wander. And when you're building this mind-wandering time into your day strategically, it can actually improve the rhythm of your brain. We call this cognitive rhythm. And it helps you go from focus to unfocus. And that means, lose gas, refuel, use gas, refuel. These types of techniques help a lot. And in the book, I've talked about a lot more that you can do to manage that kind of overwhelm.
Well, I was going to thank you for writing the book, because you wrote this book for me. I have the worst case of ADD in the world. And, when I kind of read the book title or the title and the back cover and stuff, and I said, oh, he's unfocused time. And that's half my day. Right. But I'm a list per. I live by a list. I live by my to-do list. I schedule my time. Is there something to the body, to the science of this, where I need to pay attention to my own body, my own time when I'm really super and uber focused? And for me, it's like mid-morning, I'm really tuned in, really focused. And then afternoon, it can be hit or miss. And then at night from 8 or 9 to 12, I'm right on. My brain, everything is tuned in. Is there something to that we should pay attention to in sort of in a bigger picture in work? Like, should we look at people's productivity times and try to schedule work time around that?
I mean, I personally think that while I do a lot of, I've done a lot of research. It's been 17 years in a brain imaging lab. I believe in research, but I also believe that you can't apply the research just willy-nilly to every human being. I believe that people are different, and different people work on different schedules at different times. So, like if you made me do one thing, I would not be able to do it. Like I have to be working on music, on psychiatry. I have to go out. I call myself on my Twitter profile somewhere between martinis and meditation.
I love
that's
that. Yeah.
How I am. But some people don't like martinis. Some people don't like meditation. Some people can't concentrate. So I think to the extent that you can, and a job can do this, I would recommend having target goals rather than telling people when they need to do what they want to do. Mm-hmm. Because every person works differently. So let's say you have to finish a project by Friday. Rather than micromanaging you, it's actually more effective to say to somebody, you need this by Friday, do it whenever you want. I don't care if you do it at 8 o'clock in the morning. I don't care if you do it at 8 o'clock at night. Do it whatever you want. We just need it to be done. And in that case, if you can do that, I think that kind of flexibility is great. And in fact, Richard Boyatzis and his colleagues who are in Cleveland actually did research to show that coaching for goals and results and benchmarking is less effective than coaching with compassion. So okay. when you have instrumental coaching, which is like, let's see what your goal is and how we're going to get you there, it overactivates the fight or flight response. And so people end up getting more frozen and more distracted because they're nervous about their deadlines. So right. What studies show is that if you're coaching someone, it's better to just connect with them with compassion, give them some kind of leeway. I mean, obviously you can't turn it in whenever you want to, but give them some kind of leeway because, adults are, it's interesting. I think we have, this is where we get to the heavier parts of the dilemmas, but I think we have an ambivalent relationship with freedom. And Milan Kundera,
Yes.
in his book, The Unbearable Lightness of Being, speaks to this. He says, on the one hand, we all want to be free. On the other hand, freedom makes us dizzy. Kierkegaard was the person who said anxiety is the dizziness of freedom. Right. So most people say they want freedom, but actually being without gravity is threatening. So we tend to fill our lives with tasks to do. We tend to make ourselves extra busy because left to our own devices, we're not sure what we would do. And at a deeper level, we don't have to go into that now, but I think at a deeper level, it's really important to be able to understand your own relationship as well.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. In your work with corporations, how can taking the book and stuff, how would that apply to a business? How can a company look at this and say, okay, well, we need to give people some time. We need to give people more unstructured time. We need to manage differently. Is there, how would you go about as a manager or leader, sort of trying to implement some of the recommendations in the book? Sort of broadly, because I understand it from sort of an individual standpoint, right? But if I say, okay, this makes sense for my team,
right?
How could I sort of implement it?
Yeah, I've actually worked with companies on this, so I know that it's possible to implement it. A lot of companies work with the people. So here are some of the ways.
Okay.
The first thing is when talking about scheduling, rather than talking about a timetable, talk about a tinker table. And really what we're saying is we want you to have your goals, but if you don't take a break, you're going to be compromising the quality of the work. And it's important for this to be part of the culture of the company. Right. So that's the first thing. The second thing is some companies have bought napping pods. Companies like Google, Zappos,
right.
They don't buy them because they want people to slack off. They buy them because they know that if you have permission to nap, you're going to come back and be more productive. Third, a company that I worked with recently was reconstructing their building, and they have doodle boards on every on the floor. Somewhere, let's say you go up to the waterfront, and you start, and you realize it's the doodle, and you just play with the doodle board. That incorporates it in the culture. So, I think those are some basic ways you can incorporate it. In my work with companies, I would say one of the most important unfocused techniques that I've used is something I called possibility thinking. And possibility thinking is essentially, I think, the most important technique to use in an uncertain and volatile environment at work right now.
Right.
Initially, everybody was saying we live in a VUCA world, right? There's volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And everyone tries to get better at predicting in the midst of uncertainty. Right. Well, I think now more and more people are realizing you just can't. It's the world is uncertain. You have to figure out how to accept uncertainty. And when you do that, you move from probability thinking to possibility thinking. And what this means is rather than saying, what are the chances of my success if I innovate on that? You say, what is the greatest possible innovation I can commit to? And then you say, I'm committing to it now. And then you try to figure out how you can get there, even if you don't know how. Now, people usually say, well, I don't know how. Like if I have a drying pipeline and I'm a pharmaceutical company, how do I come up with the next best medication? Or if I'm a marketing company, how do I get competitive leverage with another company? Right. And what I've worked with companies on these topics, and what we end up doing is we end up saying, well, just let's first imagine what the end result is that you want. And then we can start using your internal resources, your more unfocused resources, to figure out how to reverse engineer that process. And here, the brain has imagination, it has imitation, it has the ability to it's essentially create scenarios. And by using these more unfocused techniques in your planning meetings, this can really help. So I think the practical way you can do this is to have two kinds of strategy meetings. You have a strategy meeting for what needs to be done, and maybe once a month have a mindset strategy meeting where you reset to possibility, reset to growth mindset, explore what it means to have innovation. And by building this into the culture of an organization, you're much more likely to be successful.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I think that makes a lot of sense to me. You wrote an article that I read a while back, and I came back to it the other day. It was from 2010. It was a Psychology Today article, and it was about, and the reason I did this is, the reason I read it is because I was working with a client on things, and about perfectionism, and that perfectionism, you wrote about how to achieve a success state of mind, and the destructive role of perfectionism. Do you still think about that in the same way? Because I think the client, my particular client, is really struggling with getting this company off the ground, and and I think because of his perfectionism, it's gotten in the way of his success. And do you believe that? You still believe that, or still think that?
I do. I mean, I don't think I both believe and don't believe everything that I say, because I think
well, sometimes we change, sometimes we evolve, and sometimes, we see more, and then we evolve our thoughts and our opinions on it. But
right. But fundamentally, I do believe that perfectionism is a generally destructive force for the following reasons. I usually say to people that when you are a perfectionist, you are effectively inviting a backseat driver to your brain. Stop, start, turn left, turn right, be careful. All of a sudden you want to be like, be quiet. Like, how am I going to do my work? Because and who wants a backseat driver the whole day? So the perfectionism is like inviting a backseat driver to your brain, and you want to be able to silence that. Now, you have to first decide what kind of perfectionist you are. There are those people who are perfectionists because they want excellence, and they confuse excellence with perfection. And if you pursue excellence, the difference is that when you pursue excellence, you believe that you can get the best possible result, but you also believe that you can course correct along the way. So you're not just trying, to hit the nail on the head every step of the way. You're trying to do the best that you can. And at some level, paradoxically, you are trying to hit the nail on the head. But should you miss, you don't go into a frozen stupor. You get up and you pull yourself up at the bootstraps and you keep going. So right. Excellence is different from perfectionism. The second thing is sort of ask yourself, well, why am I perfectionistic? And a lot of people have different reasons. Some people are perfectionistic because they never actually want to reach their goals. They have an unconscious desire not to complete something. And it sounds very counterintuitive, because you'd say, well, most people would disavow that, right? Most people would say, oh, come on, like, of course I want to reach my goals. Well, goals don't work like that in the brain. I can tell you a classic example of this. I would like to be healthier. I would like to lose a little weight. I would like to exercise. That is a goal. It is a definitive goal. I work out with a trainer twice a week. I try to get my elliptical on my own. That's a definitive goal. Well, I come home, I see a piece of chocolate. I'm starving. So what do? My chocolate goal beats my workout goal. And so all of a sudden,
every time.
Yeah. So all of a sudden I'm saying to myself, it's not like I don't understand this. Like, do I understand that I have to moderate what I'm doing? Sure, I understand it. But at that moment, it's not a priority. So goals are not always acting in the service of who we are. In fact, although the commonly touted thing is that we pursue the things, and this is the other complex part of this. In the chocolate example, it's easy. I mean, the chocolate is just pleasurable. But the truth is, we don't always pursue what is pleasurable. we sometimes pursue what is the very worst thing for ourselves. In fact, that's the commonest reason people see me. People don't come to me because they don't understand that their behaviors are destructive. They know they're destructive. They just don't know. They're like, what kind of brain do I have? Like, my brain is supposed to be on my side, but it seems to me like my brain is taking me in a completely different direction. And part of it is that, we make everything black and white in the world, and we just are not. We can produce objectivity from this vastly subjective brain, but we are largely, subjective brains that can produce objectivity.
Right.
So when I talk to people about this, one deeper contemplation I invite them into is something called repetition compulsion, which is something that was discovered by Freud and a bunch of people standing around kids. And as you can imagine, they were not highly amused, but they were looking at the kids and they were like, okay, very weird behavior. The child is in the cot throwing out a toy. That's their own toy. Imagine if you went home and started throwing out all your furniture. They were like, what? This is the child's toy. Why is the child throwing out the toy? Then they're like, even more bizarre, the child is crying about it. They're like, you threw out the toy. Why are you crying about it? And then the mother brings the toy back and the child is really happy. And then the mother turns around and the child throws out the toy. So they go, okay, maybe the child is playing with the mother, or maybe, and this is one of the most troubling theories, of human psychology, that maybe we are wired to master disappointment and not seek fulfillment. And so we keep on inviting the same problems into our lives because we want to be good at the fact that life can suck. And we want to be like, you know what, I know what it is. Like, bring on more work. It's like, how did I get myself into this position? Well, you have to make a complete mindset shift. You really have to say to yourself, instead of trying to master disappointment over and over again, how do I build one fulfilling activity into my life per week? Like, let's say I can build it on Friday evenings. Let me do one thing that I really like. And then slowly realize that if you only have one per week, you're only going to have 52 moments of fulfillment in 365 days. That's not cool.
Not at all.
It's not a way to live. And so start asking yourself, how can I build more fulfillment into my life? Otherwise, autopilot is just going to keep on unconsciously inviting disappointing things into your life so you can become a master at handling them.
I mean, that means that you have to let things go.
I see this a lot in.
I think I lost you.
Yes, it does. It does mean you have to let things go. In fact, believe it or not, one of my great inspirations in this regard is Lady Gaga. And Lady Gaga reached a point in her life where she decided that she didn't want to sing. And, like, why would Lady Gaga not want to sing? She was so successful. She's a great singer. And she talked about this and she said, because I realized that I was doing stuff that I just didn't want to do. I was selling perfumes. I didn't want to sell them. I was taking selfies. She's like, it's superficial. I've got more to do than that. I was pretending to know people I didn't know. So she decided one at a time, she wanted to be able to go home at night, look at herself in a mirror and say, I want to sleep with because you have integrity. And so one by one, she started just saying no to things. And so I always say to people, if you're trying to figure out what to do, ask yourself, is there one thing in my life I can say no to? Because you'll be surprised at how many things we are doing in a day's work. Like, a lot of people, more than 50% of what they're doing is stuff they don't want to do.
Right.
And I know we can't throw all of it away, but I guarantee if you take a deep look at your life, you'll be able to find at least one thing that you can change.
Yeah, and that if that makes you happier, then that's worth doing, no doubt about it. So where can I know we've got a time today, and I actually want to have you back on at some other point to cover a bunch more. Where can people get the book and look at? I did want to talk a little bit about today about the company and the work that you're doing and how it applies sort of neuroscience and brain science and psychiatry and high performance. And I mean, I think I'm really fascinated by how that can help us perform better as companies. but I don't think we have time to do that today. Where can we find the book and more information about you and the work that you're doing?
Thank you. Yeah. So the book is Tinker, Dabble, Doodle, Try, Unlock the Power of the Unfocused Mind. And it's essentially about the fact that I respect focus, but there are ways in which we really need to refuel. And you can find the book on Amazon. You can find it in Barnes & Noble or at your local bookstore. And in terms of how to find out more about me, I am at drsrinipillay.com. It's DRSRINIPILLAY.com. Or you can find me at nbgcorporate.com. N as in Nancy, B as in boy, G as in girl, corporate.com. And I'm also, if you look me up, I'm on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. I don't claim to be a constant interactor, but I love having people on the sites, and I publish very frequently. And so to the extent that people want to read how to change their lives and how to change their mindsets, I would love to interact with people so that I can do my part while I'm alive on this earth with them.
I love hearing that. And we will certainly direct people on the program. We'll put the website up there so that they can easily get to it from our talk, and also the book link as well. So thank you so much. We'll have you back on because there's more to talk about, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. Thanks for yours as well.
And everybody, thank you for tuning in to Power Lunch Live on LinkedIn's new live platform. And we have another program this afternoon at 5:30, and we'll see you then.